Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the People. I'm Sarah Gerke, and I'll be your track moderator from here through the end of today. We're really excited to get back on track with our next excellent speaker. And what better to talk about at TIPE than becoming a woman of impact? I would love to welcome to the stage Jen Buck. Jen, I'm going to pull you up and ask you to turn on your camera and microphone really quickly. I know I am so excited to hear what you have to say and welcome you to TIPE 2023 from Women in 3D Printing and SME. And here's Jen Buck. We can't wait to hear from you. Jen, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I am, as you just heard, Jen Buck, and I'm a professional speaker. I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm also the Chief Communications Officer for an organization that helps underserved communities in 6 countries. So I started my career working for a billion-dollar global and award-winning startup. And let me tell you, it was absolutely sort of testosterone dominant. And I had to quickly figure out how to navigate my way through that organization. Now, I was there for a decade, and everything that I now teach and know comes from that amazing and often challenging sort of training ground, if you will, right? Since then, I have been activating, accelerating, and amplifying rockstar women in the workplace. And I've been doing this for 24 years. And my life's mission is to help high-performing women get into those spaces where power resides and decisions are made. And then that's the nuts and bolts of everything that I do. And today, what I'm going to be doing is talking to you about becoming a woman of impact. Now, your industry is emerging by the day, right? And we know that as technology continues to penetrate more widely and deeply across all sectors, your momentum and the momentum of this industry is only going to increase, which means, by the way, that your contribution is going to increase, right? And you're going to be driving major life-changing innovation. So I need you to be willing to dial up everything that you do so that you can be ready to make an impact. Now, here's what I know. You're ready to make an impact because you're here, because you're in this industry, and because you're doing what you're doing. But we don't always put that same focus on our career and our own career trajectory. And that's what this is about today. When we look at social change and the myriad of contributions that women have made to historical events and even, of course, the society that shapes our world today, it's a woman's social, mental, and emotional compass that is often guiding us. And the business world is thankfully finally waking up to that. There's truly never been a better time for women to take the lead in creating massive and purposeful impact than right this very moment. And that's the thing I want you to know. This entire keynote is about intentionality, purposeful action. I know that you are a woman of impact. I know that you have a laser focus on your career, but I'm going to ask you to dial it up in terms of your intentionality. And that's the point I really want to make with you. Now, right this second, we are watching more women head up organizations. We're watching more countries with women at the helm, and more women are getting advanced degrees than we have ever seen before. Additionally, Black women hold more degrees than any other demographic, and more women are leading innovation than we've ever seen before. So these are super exciting times as we watch women take center stage and plant their flag. And thankfully, corporate America is noticing. Corporate America is starting to make the change so that we are treated equitably, both in our pay and our positions. So I've committed, like I said, my entire life to amplify the phenomenal work that women contribute. And my greatest wish is to see you lead bravely, to step into your power and be agile enough to create a movement that will have an impact on the world around you. The goal is for you to leave a legacy and be a woman of impact, be known as a woman of impact. Now, the number one question I get whenever I give a keynote, and like I said, I do this for a living, but when I give a workshop or keynote, the number one thing I'm always asked is, why weren't we taught this when we were younger? And I'm going to tell you, I don't know. But I'm happy to say that I work with a lot of women out there who are now teaching the girls this same stuff. Many of us were raised with some of those sort of old, crusty, outdated gender rules about who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to act. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that your parents gave you those rules, but you got them from society, right? Because you weren't just in your parents' care all the time. So even though a lot of that, all those crusty rules are changing, thank goodness, there are still people who believe in those old rules. And there are really two things that still exist. Old dudes in the executive suites who still believe in those rules, right? I mean, it's just the truth. I speak the truth, people. And we also have the second thing, a lot of men who were also taught those rules from the time they were little. So while I don't intend to say that there is malicious intent behind those rules, I don't want you to think that. And I also want you to know that I love men, okay? But here's the deal. I really, really, really love women, like love women. And my goal is to get you into the rooms where the decisions are made. So in order for us to be able to have a really honest conversation about what's going on, I have to be able to identify where some of those gaps are, and we have to be able to fill those holes, right? So here are a few examples where I think we can all see different ways that parents raise their boys versus how they raise their girls, right? So boys, for instance, are taught to sort of put her there, right? And have a strong presence when they meet people. And they were also taught to have that strong handshake in particular, right? I mean, I remember my brother being taught to squeeze harder and look, in someone's eyes. And my dad would say, son, look in his eyes when you shake his hands. Okay, my dad never, ever said that to me or my sisters, right? Boys are taught to showcase their success. Now think about this. When you were little, and it probably is not the way you're raising your boys now, but here's the deal. When you were little, I bet the boys in your family were encouraged to regale their success, for every winning play and every detail that caused them to win the game, right? You remember it, tell them more, tell them how you stood, show them what you did, like all the things, right? You know what I'm talking about here. Now let's flip it. I, on the other hand, and I'm guessing you too, for some of you in this room, we were taught to not be a bragger. I remember the exact phrase, no one likes a show off. We were told what's appropriate. And usually waiting our turn was at the top of that list, right? We know what ladylike behavior is because they drilled it into us. Now, again, whether it was your family or teachers or just sort of society at large, you got it. Now, it's not that any of this is right or wrong. And that's the thing I want you to know. I am not anti the rules necessarily. But because of these old worn out rules, we've really not been able to use them in our favor in the workplace. And as we start competing for top spots and equitable pay, those old rules get in the way of us being able to compete equally. And that's what I'm here to talk about. I'm committed to changing that. Each and every one of us has to get comfortable with strategically positioning ourselves. And that's not something, again, that was taught to us. We've got to get comfortable choreographing access to people in positions of power. And we have to be seen as a high value partner. Honestly, I have never been taught any of these things, and I've had to learn them sort of on the fly as I have flown through my career. So how do we learn them, and how do we become known as a woman of impact, a woman of high value? That's what I'm here to talk about. And I've got 3 pillars I want to give you. And as we go through this, I want you to know I live by these things every day, and that's why I'm here to share them with you today. So the first pillar is, and get your pens ready because I want you to write these things down. I'm not somebody who uses a lot of whiteboards and PowerPoint and all of that, just because I want you to be here with me right now and I want you to sort of ride the wave. So the first thing I want you to write down is tap into your deep bravery. Tap into your deep bravery. Now, I'm not saying that you have to become fearless. I'm not even sure that's possible, honestly, but I'm saying that you need to be able to tap into your bravery and choose to go against everything that your mind and body is telling you. Deep bravery is when you literally go to the very limit of your self-control and rational thinking and go against everything that everyone, even your own mind and body, is telling you is possible. Now, if you know what I'm talking about, this is probably going to ring true for you because all our life we've had to listen to them, right? We've had to trust other people, that it's just not meant to be. But I'm telling you, deep bravery says that you've got to trust yourself in the work you've done, and you've got to step forward. We make an impact by stepping into the unknown, by disregarding fear and focusing on how we can create change that's going to benefit others. That's why you're in this industry, right? It's not necessary for you to follow every, little ring of fear that is giving you a message. Your body is wired to give you messages, but it is necessary for you to trust that you have done the work, you're ready for something different, and you have the limitless courage residing within you, waiting to be tapped into. This is about understanding that there's a space that's often disguised as a terrifying choice or terrifying failure, where you could totally fall on your ass horribly and look like a fool, okay? You could blow it all. But with practice, you start to realize that you've prepared, you've put your ducks in a row, and you can expand your opportunities tremendously if you are willing to go against your instincts. And I say this to you because it's not comfortable. I say this to you because this is the way we unlock the door to the next level. All right. Have I fallen and failed and blown it? Of course I have. Yeah. And does it feel like jumping out of an airplane without a pack? Yeah, it does. And does it feel like jumping off a cliff and taking the biggest leap of my life? Yeah, it does. But here's what I want you to remember. Remember, you have within you the ability to achieve more, but you just have to be willing to access the deep bravery and trust that you're prepared. Get your pens ready. I'm going to give you a couple of things that I also want to give you to just jot down real quickly that are going to help you sort of jumpstart that practice of bravery, because that's what it is. The courage is there. You've got to be willing to act upon it, which is your acts of bravery, right? So first, you need to get comfortable with the word absolutely. Now, this seems crazy, but it's something that I have forced myself over the years to spit out. All the thought that goes into my mind when somebody's asking me, can you do this? Do you want to do this? Here's what I say. Absolutely. That word opens up doors and pushes you to your very limits. When you're asked, do you want to try this new thing? Your answer is absolutely. When you're asked, do you want to lead this project? Your answer is absolutely. When you're asked, do you want to present at this huge high exposure conference with 10,000 people in the audience? Your answer, absolutely. Trust me on this. It's been one of my greatest secret weapons. And I have gotten into more places because I just said absolutely than anything else. Now, I say yes first, and then I figure out how to get it done. And what I want you to know is that often other people end up seeing our value before we do. And when they're offering, we need to be accepting. And that's the point of this, because they see our value before we do. I've spoken on massive stages. I've written books. I've led 3 federal US congressional campaigns as a chief of staff. I tell you this because I didn't know how to do any of it. All right. I didn't know how to do one of those things, but I said absolutely with every single one of them, went home and threw up, and then got on the internet and figured out how to do it. That's as truthful as I can be with you, right? Because absolutely gets me in the door. The next thing I want you to write down is this: commit to being your own best advocate. Commit to being the person that is willing to do more than everyone else. Commit to being the person who's willing to research more, come more prepared, speak more often. Be willing to strategically position yourself and your results by sharing them without reservation and guilt. There's the key, right? Because that's hard to do. I want you to use your voice. I want you to be willing to speak your truth and be heard, even if the messages don't perfectly align with the status quo, or if it's going against popular opinion. Your voice doesn't have to be loud, but it has to be heard. And that's the point of this. I want you to be willing to step up to the table. I want you to be willing to pull your seat from the wall and get up to that table and not sit in the back. I remember years ago, I was going to a meeting. I founded a nonprofit. There was a problem in my community and nobody was doing a whole heck of a lot. So I decided to jump in. Did I know how to do it? No. Did I do it? Absolutely. So I went to this meeting and my 2 senators were there, US senators. And I'm like trying to get there so fast. I finally squeak in with 1 minute to go. And I remember getting into this room. And of course, they're like the big stage, if you will, that has all of the flags and the special chairs and whatnot. But all of the seats in the very small audience, because there were about 30 of us, were taken. All they had left were seats around the wall. And I remember thinking, I'm not doing this. I worked so hard to get here. There was press out front, security to get in. I mean, it was a show. And you know what I really want to say? It was a show. So as it turns out, I grabbed a chair from the wall and I saw a woman sitting front and center, front row. And I walked over there with my chair like this. And I literally whispered in her ear, do you mind scooting over just a tiny bit so that I can sit next to you? And she was like, oh, no, not at all. Come on in. Come on in. I got into that chair and I sat in that front spot with her. She was lovely and had this really incredible meeting. And I went there trying to get things done. And because of where I sat, I was able to be heard. I was able to be seen. Fast forward 3 years. That's the CEO that I work for today as her chief communications officer. Why did she come to me to be in that role? Because she remembered our first meeting when I did that. So I say this to you because we've got to be willing. It's not fearless, but we have got to be willing to not only step into that deep bravery, but to be a great advocate for ourselves, right? So I want you to think about what it's going to take for you to step up. Now, the next one I want you to write down here, and this is actually my second pillar. It's choose to be gutsy. That day I was gutsy. And trust me, I was afraid. Right? I was nervous. I was afraid she would be like, what are you doing? But she didn't. She was gracious and lovely, which is why I work for her today, because she's wonderful. But I had to choose to be gutsy. And that's what I want you to write down. Bold moves demand imagination and determination. And women have that in spades. Dreaming big and finding the right partners and being willing to lean in are what is really going to help all of us become a woman of impact and leave a legacy, which is really what it's all about. But here's the thing, none of us can do it alone. And women of impact know that they need the support of the village, right? It always takes a village. And especially when we're in a male-dominated space. We need our allies. We love our male allies, but it takes a village. So I want you to think about this and get your pens ready here. I want you to be willing to flex that gutsy muscle. And what that means is, write this down. I need you to strategically build a squad of badass women. Strategically build a squad of badass women. Yeah, I did. I said it. I'm really getting sassy today. So strategically build a squad of badass women. Find the trusted partners who will sponsor and build you up when you're not in the room. In fact, let me say that again. It's so important. Find those trusted partners who will bring you up and build you up when you're not in the room. Find your hype women. I always say that women need to act more like a Pink Ladies girl gang. Kind of like what you just heard about on the main stage, right? Like in the movie Grease, the Pink Ladies, where everyone is supported. All abilities are amplified and everyone stands strong together in the face of adversity. That's who we need to be. We need to bring everybody in, support everybody, amplify each other, and open up doors and bring access to the people that we trust the most. Find your badass girl gang. Find your squad. Find your Rizzo, right? The point of all of this is that we need to find a group of women who we can trust and who we can conquer the world with. I remember when I was young, my grandmother was probably one of my greatest cheerleaders growing up. And she had raised 3 daughters, my mom and her 2 sisters. And I remember that, when my aunts would tell stories about being in school and being nervous and whatever, they would always talk about my grandmother who would say this phrase, chin up, shoulders back, march. That was always the phrase that she used with the 3 girls. Well, when I was growing up, like fast way forward, all those 3 women had 7 boys and 1 girl. And I'm at the bottom of the heap. It was rad. So I ended up being, as you can imagine, bullied and picked on and, like really ganged up on all the time. And as much as I, being youngest and the little girl and all of the things, as much as I wanted to cry, I always had my grandmother who would be standing somewhere and she would look at me and she would do this. Because I knew from the time I was this big, chin up, shoulders back, march was what my grandmother absolutely drilled into my head, just like she had with her girls. I say this to you because she was my hype girl. She could have yelled at the boys and told them, leave her alone, right? She could have done all of those things, but instead she built me up. And that's what hype girls do. Hype women build one another up. And my grandma was an absolute pro at that. I also want you to write this down. Be the most persistent person you know. The most persistent person you know. I've been asked what my secret weapon is for years, and always it's the two that are my greatest. First is absolutely. And this next one is I'm the most persistent person I know. And I want you to think about how persistent you are. I am that person who will never, ever, ever freaking give up. Okay. Never. And I need you to know that a woman of impact has a work ethic that keeps her on course and keeps her working hard, even in the face of difficulty or opposition, if you will. But sometimes the people around us tell us, you know what, just give it up. It's not meant to be. It shouldn't be this hard. I'm going to tell you that persistence may look like to others that you have a willingness to fail, but it's not a willingness to fail at all. It's about keeping at it, learning from your mistakes, and never, ever, ever quitting. And you know that. And that quiet resilience is what really is our inner compass and our inner drive to change the world. And what I want you to remember is that life is going to knock us down. Like it's just a reality. But there is strength in knowing that when you fall, you will have a backup plan. You will have learned something, and you're going to commit to doing better next time. In other words, you may fall, but you are absolutely not going to give up. You know, I remember I was years ago needing some governmental support for my nonprofit, and I wasn't even getting calls back. And I heard that our representative, our US representative, a different one, he was our congressional rep, was having a birthday party at a restaurant. So I decided, you know what, I'm sneaking in. Of course, I didn't get an invite, and I probably never will after this, but I decided to go to this thing. And I did sneak in, and it was not pretty. And in fact, it probably was not legal, and I don't recommend it. But I saw him standing around with all his buddies. They look like a bunch of frat dudes. And I walked right up in the middle of them, introduced myself, and I asked him for what I wanted. I told him why, I gave him stats. I had my ducks in a row, and I knew exactly what I was saying. And that day, that man agreed to meet with me in person later. Now, I know he was wondering, who is this crazy person? But I did it because I knew the people that I served, these families who were underserved in our community, deserved better from our representative. And was I scared? Oh, hell yes, I was scared. Terribly afraid. But I did it because I know. And I knew then, really that's the key. I knew then that these people deserved it. And I needed to be the most persistent person I could be for them. So I want you thinking about what it is that you need to be persistent for. And I want you to be agile enough to find a way to do it. I want you to figure out how you can embrace agility even more in your life than you ever have before. By the nature of your industry, I know you're incredibly agile. I get it. But I need you to start applying these things to your own advancement in order for you to not just be agile for your products, but for your own professionalism, for your own career trajectory. Your willingness to showcase your abilities, your talent, to adapt to change and make the most of whatever's happening around you is the key differentiator that's going to be noticed by the people that you're working with. And I want you to be the person that other people are talking about. I want you to be the person that is known to revolutionize your workplace. Coco Chanel revolutionized women's fashion because she thought women deserved a more comfortable, gender-neutral clothing line. And she used fashion as a statement against the patriarchy. I love her. And she decided to go against all the societal norms. She was committed to freeing women so that they could be themselves, be comfortable, and do better in their own lives with their own opportunities. What I want you to think about is how you can start doing things differently, finding a way to say absolutely and try new things, finding a way to be your own best advocate, finding a way to get out there and be persistent and do whatever it takes to knock down doors that are not currently open to you. Becoming a woman of impact means that there are going to be certainly small impacts that we make, but there's also going to be larger ones. And then there are going to be some enormous impacts that we make. but the key is we make an impact all the same. Women of impact understand that they have the power and positive influence to change the people in the world around them. And that's what I want for you. There are loads and loads of younger women who are following in our footsteps. And our job is to create a world that opens up to them and gives them those equitable opportunities where they can see a balance of power of men and women in those executive suites. And they will know that it's because there were women like you and I who are willing to tap into our deep bravery and do whatever it took to change the world that we live in. So I say good luck to you. I thank you for having me. I hope you enjoyed this 20 or 25 minutes we had together. And I am going to hand it back. And it was a pleasure to be here. Thanks all so much.
Thank you so much, Jen, for being here. We're so grateful for your time, your expertise, and everything you've had to share with us about flexing these muscles and really building them up. From one woman of impact, to all of us, I think your insights are absolutely invaluable, and we're so grateful that you were here to speak with the 3D printing community today.
Thank you
for your time. And I know we had a bit of a late start, so unfortunately we don't have time for Q&A. Jen, I do know that you've got to rush away now, and I hope all is well. But if you have time to stop back on our networking stages later, I know we have some questions we didn't have time to get to today. So I would love to welcome you back for that a little bit later.